Okay, we are going to expand your chord theory knowledge. And you already know a ton of chord theory, far more than most people ever will. So you may have looked at the guitar profiles already and thought, what the heck is this? So we're starting with something we've done before, and that's just taking your 3-note chord triads and moving them up to starting on the A string, starting on the D string, and then started on the G string. So this way you get more familiar with the chords that way. And you can come up with all kinds of neat riffs and whatnot after you're able to go through the chords like this. So same thing you've done before, you're going to start with the 1 chord, which is now minor. So that's another thing that happens if you were working with your regular, major, minor key type stuff. So like the key of A minor. You could look at it kind of like we're doing here. So instead of looking at C as chord number 1 or position 1, well, you can look at it from a minor perspective, which is basically what we're doing here. So in the key of C, that's the relative to the key of C is A minor. So you could look at it as A minor is the 1 chord. So A minor would be 1, B minor is 2, C major is 3, D minor is 4, E minor is 5, F major is 6, G major would be 7. So you basically wind up with the same thing, you just got a different starting point you're looking at. So that's from the minor scale perspective, or minor key perspective. And if we hadn't gone over this, to find the relative major or minor of any key, it's like the key of C. If you go down a step and a half, or half step then a whole step, I'm going to do it that way since it's in key. So you go down a half step then a whole step, that gets you the relative minor, which is A. So let's say we're in the key of E. Well, the relative minor to that, go down a half step, then a whole step, that gets you C sharp. C sharp minor. C sharp minor is the relative minor to E major. And let's say the key of A. Go down half step, then a whole step, that gets you F sharp. So F sharp minor is the relative minor to the key of A. So the opposite direction is what you do to get the relative major. So let's say we're doing B minor. You go up a whole step, then a half step, you land on D. So key of D is the relative major to B minor. So neat little thing to know if you want to quickly go between calling stuff the key, major key or the minor key, and so on. So here we go, explaining a bit more here. So far we've basically looked at stacking up the intervals in numerical order. We have had some chords where they're not in order, and that's called a voicing. So a lot of the chords you've been playing, let's say the A minor for example, that's a voicing of an A minor chord. What that means is the intervals are jumbled up. They're not in order. So you're going from 1, skipping the flat 3 to 5, 1, flat 3, and 5. Let's maybe do it here instead. 1, skipping the flat 3 to 5. There's your 1 again, flat 3, 1, 5. So eventually it ends up going in order. But so going like 1, 5, 1, 3, that's a voicing. Or you could do something like 1, 3, 1, 5. Basically you're just kind of going out of order, jumping around there. Well, inversion, the idea is you have the same order of intervals, but instead of starting on the 1, you might start on the 3 and go 3, 5, 1. Or you might start on the 5 and go 5, 1, 3, which is what we got going on here. So we scroll down a bit. So we got your first inversion here of these triads. So this is the flat 3rd interval, then the 5, root notes on top. So the chord names are listed out to be specific. So that is an A minor chord, but to be more specific or pedantic, it's an A minor over C. I'm saying that C is the new bass note. It's not it's not the root note. The A is still the root note. That's like our tonal center. We're basing what we call this chord off of that A note, but we're doing an inversion here. So now you have like even more options with these triad chords. Now here, chord 3, you may have looked at that and be like, why the heck is that called the E augmented? Well, I decided to let Guitar Pro just keep the default chord name. So way back when you were learning about triads and you did that worksheet where you wrote out the 3 notes that make all the triad chords, and we went through augmented, I said any note in an augmented chord can be considered the root note, and you'd wind up with the same three notes. So a C augmented chord, C, E, G sharp. Well, C, E, G sharp. C, E, G sharp. So it's still, like, technically you could say, yes, it is an inversion of a C augmented. There's your C, that's the root. There's your E, that's the 3. There's your G sharp, which is the sharp 5. But you start on E, and you go through your steps, you wind up again with the same 3 notes. So a C augmented is an E augmented is a G sharp augmented. So any note within the augmented chord can be considered the root note, and you wind up with the same 3 notes. So that's why I left it there. So when you look at number 2, the second guitar profile, you'll see that I kept C augmented as the main chord and then just put the new bass note after it. But anyway, we'll get there in a sec. So yeah, that's what the this is right here. You're going to write out the inversions of all this stuff, starting on the A string, the D string, and so on. And then we got the second inversion here where we're going 5, 1, flat 3. Or to simplify things, just 5, 1, 3. So I like these a lot. They go really well with distortion. When you put the 5th interval in the base of the chord, it makes the chord sound bigger, or bassier, I should say. Sound boomier. So we get to chord 3 here, and again I let Guitar Pro's default chord names just stay. So like I mentioned earlier, just a moment ago, G sharp augmented is also a C augmented, is also an E augmented. So that's why I just left that here. So same thing, just write out the chords again with this inversion, starting on the A string, D string, and then the G string. After that, after you get through all that, gonna have you play some arpeggios and write out these things while using inversions. So we got your first 2 done, and I'm using the same 8 chord progressions that we've been using this whole time, starting with the 1, 4, 5, 4, 1, 4, 5, 4, and then the 6, 2, 3, 2, and then so on. It just keeps going through the same progressions we have been. But now things are a bit different. The 1 is now minor, and other things have changed, right? And we also have, some different chords in general, or we have an augmented chord now. So that's something we haven't messed with in these progressions yet. So basically what we got here, starting off with just a straight ahead triad, okay? And then when I go to the next chord, and this is something important that I want you to try and do, when you go from one chord to the next, I want you to use inversions here to cover even less ground. So in the past, the idea with stuff like this has been to move as little as possible. Well, now you're going to move even less. So when you go from one chord to the next, if you can use an inversion that also retains 1 or more frets, do so. So when you go from the A minor to the D minor, the A note is in the D minor as well. So that's where we're going here to here, and then up to the E over G sharp, basically an E major. Well, they don't share anything, so we just go to the next closest thing we can. So that's what we got here. And then the next progression, we got the 6-2-3-2. So they got the F chord to start, and then we have the B diminished is next, and a B diminished shares the F note. So we keep that 13th fret on the low E. And then I'm looking at this B note as the root note. So we're going up here to the C augmented with G in the bass, or G sharp in the bass. We could have also labeled that G sharp augmented, but I wanted to use the C root note at the start of the chord because it's position 3. Anyway, so just here to here, share the F sharp note in both chords. You can do your 3 fingers here as well for the augmented. The B diminished and C augmented don't share any notes, so we're just going from this to the next closest chord here, looking at it from root note to root note, and then back down. Okay, so what I want you to do with those progressions that are already tapped out, be able to play them. And now here's where your task comes in. And you know what? I'm sorry, I just remembered I was going to demonstrate doing all that stuff with picking with my thumb. It's this way you're influenced to not exacerbate the injury. Which, I want to know how that's going. Hopefully you're doing better there. Anyway, I'm going to try to remember asking that in the email itself. Brain fart. Okay, there we go. So the next 2 progressions, start with your basic triad, but start these on the A string, and then the next 2 started on the D string. You don't have to have every chord on the D string, but who knows, maybe that's going to be the most efficient way. So the root note of this chord starts on the D string, and then just go where you need to go. And then the last 2 progressions, which you can't see all there you go. Last 2 progressions, start those on the G string, okay? So that is that. The first thing, just finish moving all those chords up to the next set of strings in the guitar profile number 1, and then guitar profile number 2. Be able to play the 2 examples already written out, and then start writing the others, and use inversions to cover even less ground than you've done before. If going to the next chord shares 1 or 2 notes, keep those in the next shape that you go to, and so you have to use one of the inversions to make that happen. And there you go. So a bit more thinking involved this time because you got new shapes. And if any questions come up, please let me know. Please let me know how your finger is doing as well. Hopefully that's better. And I will talk to you soon.